All right, so I'd like to welcome everybody to the main meeting of the Delaware Astronomical Society. So first item, any new members want to introduce yourselves?
Well, I'm not a new member, but this is the first meeting that I've attended to that was in Zoom. So it's great to reconnect with you folks. It's a lot easier than driving down there from being north of Philadelphia, but looking forward to getting back there once everything's opened back up.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, by all means, come to our meeting once we get open.
Bring us another eyepiece.
Yes.
Yeah, you get to be on the other side of the table this time, Preston.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, yes, exactly.
All right. Next item, I'd like to.
Oh,
yeah.
Again, sorry, just a little comment there, Preston. Man, it's amazing how time flies. That was 4 or 5 years ago that you gave us that talk.
Yeah.
Good gravy. I would have thought it was 2, and I quickly learning that I should double or triple however long ago I thought things were.
Yeah, that's
Welcome, Jeff. I've been doing that for 20 years.
Actually, it's 40, but
Right.
actually.
That's why you see sort of a red tone on my one side. It's moving pretty quick.
Oh, now
Yes.
there's an astronomical joke.
So just to let everybody know, we're currently looking at doing a picnic. We were having some planning discussions the last 2 meetings, and we are officially getting it off the road. It'll probably be June 5th if you want to put that on your calendar, but we're going to flex schedule that based upon the weather. It may be better on the 4th or the 5th, depending. And it's going to be at Rick Spencer's house. He has been kind enough to offer his facilities. If you don't know, he has a big, beautiful backyard with extremely dark skies, and he has a really great area where we can have a good picnic. So it's to be really nice. So yeah, that's June 5th to let everybody know about that. And Jeff is currently heading up the planning committee so that we can get all the stuff for everybody to have a picnic. We are gonna actually supply the food for this picnic because we have not had any refreshments at any of our meetings. So it's gonna be a free food picnic, which is gonna be
Right.
very exciting.
Yeah, I'll be sending out a survey or something in the next handful of days to try to get a rough head count, for purchasing food.
Yep.
And just to let you know, Rick's located pretty near Fair Hill in Maryland.
Also,
Oh,
even
okay.
though that we're buying the food, I'm sure people could still bring desserts or what have you. We can still be a partial potluck, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you want to bring desserts, that's awesome. Desserts are always great.
Make some mean brownies.
Yeah, awesome. Yes,
Ooh.
we do.
Not that kind, Sheila.
Oh,
Right.
darn, you read my mind, Todd.
Did I miss anything else about the picnic? I guess we'll send more details in an email later on, explaining all the details of how it'll work and how to get there and all that sort of stuff. Jeff, anything else? Nope. All right. Next item. We have an election currently going on. Sydney, can you update us on that real quick?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Rob. I'd just like to make a quick update that May is election time for the Delaware Astronomical Society, and we are voting for a seat for 3 board members at large. And you should have received actually an email from Sid Astronomy. And for those who have already voted, thank you very much. This reminder is pretty much for those who haven't voted yet. Just go search for that email, DAS 2021 election, and you should be able to find it in your email and just fill in the survey. And elections will finish on May 31st. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sid. You're doing a great job with the election. Very nice. Next item on the agenda, and this will excite a number of people, is that our loaner gear is now ready to loan again. We have cleaned it up. We got new bags with embroidery and all kinds of great stuff. We got some new eyepiece kits, and it should be really nice. So we have 3 Dobbs currently available for loan to anyone who's interested. If you are interested, you can contact Chris Horrocks about that, and he can get those out, get them in use, by all means. Anything else to add about that, anybody? Chris, did I get everything?
Yeah, and we'll have some other stuff coming online too.
Fantastic. Very nice. All right, I believe that's all I had on my agenda. Jeff, did we miss anything?
I think we're good.
If not, you can continue with the rest of the meeting.
All right. So tonight, actually, before I announce the speaker, I want to give a little bit of a background. I am as the vice president, I am then the de facto programming chair. But I try to reinforce the idea that I am a chair, not a dictator, meaning I love help. If people know people that can give great talks, I love the tips. I've had numerous people that have done that in the past. It's lovely. Obviously my sphere is only so large, and I try to get a diversity of talks in. And so I'm always soliciting people for, speakers, or the other one is ideas. And that actually leads us to tonight's talk, which came as a special request. And I mean, for some reason in my mind's eye, picture this discussion happening while we were face to face. So this request, but maybe I'm, again, to Greg's point, my sense of time is all distorted. It may have been during one of our virtual Zoom hangouts. But our speaker tonight, by special request of some handful of club members, is Judi, who is a...
You started to say my last name and then you stopped.
Judi Provencal.
Good job.
Who is a professor of physics at the University of Delaware, and more importantly to us at least, the resident astronomer at Mount Cuba. A lot of us have seen Judi around a whole lot, and the reason that Judi is our speaker tonight, other than she's wonderful and a good talk speaker and all that stuff, is there was actually a request to get an update about the upgrades that have been going on at Mount Cuba with the new telescope and what that's going to mean and what that will be used for. And then part B was, there was a request to hear more about the SARA program. And if people say, what the heck is the SARA program? Well, that's a great question, because Judy's going to tell us all about it.
I will tell you, yes. That's my plan for tonight.
All right. So we've got a kind of a two-part talk, and heck, maybe the two topics even interweave themselves, but just really wanted to reinforce the idea that this came about by a request from club members. So again, if people have a speaker that they would love to hear, by all means, pass them on to me. Or if you don't have a speaker, but a topic that you'd like to hear about, I could try to go and find someone to give a talk on that topic. Again, I am simply the programming chair. I am not the programming dictator, and more than I really appreciate the help. So with that, Judi, first question, per usual, some logistics. We have been recording these sessions and posting them on our YouTube channel. Do you have any objection to us doing that for tonight's meeting?
No.
All right. And then the other logistic is to, try not to overly disrupt the flow of the talk. We would like to encourage people to use the chat window for any questions. Rob and I will be keeping an eye on it. And that way we just keep the audio kind of chatter, at a minimum, so Judi can come through. Again, this is loose, this is casual. Often I'll break in and allow people to ask the questions directly. And certainly towards the end of the talk, we'll kind of, let out some chain and people, can ask questions directly. But just to keep, at least in the beginning, the flow of the presentation smooth, we'd like to encourage people to use the chat to ask questions. And then the flip side of that, what happens a lot in the past is, if other club members have the answers to those questions, by all means, jump in and, if there's, and that way, if there's any questions that are too tough, we'll let Judi take those. So with that, Judi, again, thank you as always for coming and giving us a talk tonight, and the floor is yours.
Well, 1 second, we do have to mute everybody.
Yeah.
So just give me a moment to.
Don't
click
mute
the
me.
button. Mute you and then unmute you.
You did mute me.
You have to mute all and then you have to unclick it.
I know, I'm teasing you, giving you a hard time. All right, thank you everyone for inviting me. And I'm very excited to tell you a little bit about what's been going on at Mount Cuba since the pandemic started. So I'm going to share my screen here. and start my PowerPoint. Did that work? I think it worked. Does everybody see that?
Yep. We see it. We still see like the sidebar, but you know, it's probably fine, Judy.
Yeah, I still see my screen, my original, but I moved it off. Okay. So I know everybody, we've all been shut down for over a year now, but there's been a lot going on actually at Mount Cuba. So that's why I titled this talk, What I Did During the Pandemic, because the observatory has actually been doing quite a bit, and it's actually been keeping me sane as the pandemic goes on. So what I've got here on my first slide is a little bit of a timeline. Over here on the left is a couple of an old drawing of the observatory when it was in the planning stages, and then a photograph of the observatory after the construction. So this is the past. And then in the middle is where we are now with the 24-inch and the 4-inch refractor and the couple of other small telescopes that we have, plus the Sawin Observatory too. So this is the present in the middle. And over here on the right is the future, which is rapidly coming to be. We're in the process of, I shouldn't say rapidly, let's slow down. It's starting to become into the present. Up here in the top picture here is a picture of the mirror of the new telescope. It's being manufactured by a company called DFM. And the mirror itself is made out of zero door. It's a ceramic material, and it's going to be a 1.3 meter telescope that eventually is going to look like this little telescope here on the right. And then down in the bottom here is a picture of the observatory now, taken from the top of the hill, looking back down the observatory towards the parking lot, so you can see the other two domes as well. So I'm going to show you how this all came to be and take you on a journey of how to build something big during a pandemic. So the journey began in October. And the original timeline that the company gave us to finish construction of the building was they were going to be done by the beginning of December of 2020. Unless I'm mistaken, it is now the middle of May. And we're almost finished. There's still some things going on, some little details to finish up with, but it's getting there. But it is May, not December of 2020. So here's on the left, we have the back of the observatory. You're looking off towards the hill. On the part of the building you see on the left is the
Hey,
computer.
Judy, we're still on your first slide. I'm not sure.
The first slide.
Yeah.
Change. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Let me get out of here and try again. Let me stop sharing my screen. Maybe I grabbed the wrong screen.
Gotcha.
Let me try this again here. Whiteboard. Why do I have a whiteboard?
So we can play tic-tac-toe.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because that's not anything that's open on my computer.
That's default with Zoom.
It seems that my PowerPoint has crashed, so let me start it again here.
Right before you got out of it, it was working at the last second. Right.
LibreOffice. I have a backup. I have it as a PDF in case I need to do that. So we'll try this one more time.
Did you print transparencies?
I have transparencies, yes. Transparency. All right, come on, get over here.
At least they're not those mimeographed sheets from the little purple ink machine.
I used to spend a lot of time on those transparencies because I liked to. Why is it not? I like to make. I would do calligraphy on them and use different colors. Get up here. Okay, here we go. Let's try this again. I swear we tested this and it worked fine.
Yes, it did.
All right, this time I'm making sure I grab the LibreOffice window. So now you guys should see, it's kind of like PowerPoint.
The journey begins.
Okay. Now let's start the slide. And I'm still seeing the window.
Yeah, we're not seeing presentation view. Oh, there it
There we
is.
go.
You get it? Okay.
Good.
Okay. So, all right. So now this is the second slide. So this is the beginning of the journey in October. So you're looking back at the hill behind the observatory. This is where the building was constructed. So the piece of the original building you're seeing off to the left here is the computer room. And the very first thing they had to do was build an access road to get the heavy equipment up to the top of the hill. So that's what this lower picture here on the right is showing, is the construction of the access road. And then they got the big, I don't know what this thing is called, it's not a backhoe. What is this big machine called? But they brought that up the hill and started digging. And that's when
track hoe.
A backhoe.
No, track hoe.
A track hoe. Okay.
Yeah.
They started digging, and that was when it started getting pretty interesting. So did it change? So you should now see a slide called the footings.
Yes, we do.
And this was the very first step. This is actually the most important part of the observatory, the new building, because we had to put in the footings for the building, and we also had to put in what's called the embed structure. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. That is how we aligned the mount for the telescope with north. But here you can start to see how much digging they had to do. They had to go down 6 or 7 feet. And it turned out that this is all rock in the hill. And it took quite a long time to actually dig this out, all this rock. But they got down finally after about a month or so. It's supposed to take a couple days. And now here they are putting in the rebar for the footings for the observatory. And down here in the lower part, low picture on the right, you can see they've started to pour the concrete for the base of the observatory itself. And then this was a lot of fun. This is the part that still scares me about the whole observatory building, because this was really important. We had to find true north, which is not, and it's not measured at noon. It's measured at solar noon. And so you have to find out what time that is. And what we had to do was set up a tripod with a plumb bob. And this is my first attempt here on the right-hand side of this slide. So I brought my camera tripod in, and you can kind of see I actually had a couple of eye hooks dangling from a string here. And on this piece of board, there was a line drawn on it. And so at true noon, what you do is you mark the position of the shadow of the string. And at that time, that direction is true north. And so the first time we did this, I was there by myself because I was freaking out, because it was getting close to the time when we were going to start to actually put the embed structure in, and we hadn't actually measured true north yet. So I went out there on a Saturday to do it myself, and turns out true north at the time went right over this big pile of rocks that they had left. So I'm out there trying to measure. We wanted to get a position outside of the construction fence and mark it out there. So I had to scramble up over this pile of rocks and things to get out to the orange construction fence to put in a more permanent marker as to where true north was. But it turned out that I actually did a pretty good job. So over here on the right-hand side is our second attempt. We actually did it 3 times just to make sure that we were getting a good result. And all three measurements agreed within a couple inches. So I was actually pretty proud of my clambering over the rock pile here. It turned out to be as accurate as when they finally moved the rock pile, so that we could measure it more easily. But here we have another tripod, and you can see we put the board on a sawhorse, And then there's a black line on here. And so at noon, at true noon, you would measure the position of the direction of the shadow of the string, and that would be your true north. And it's really important because the telescope has to be lined up with true north. And so if this is off, then the telescope's not going to work so well. And we still don't know exactly if it's precise or not. I'm hoping that it is, but it still gives me nightmares. I'm 99% sure we did a good job, but it does give me nightmares until it's actually tested and find out. But the picture up here at the top is showing you the embed structure that comes with the observatory building. And the round circle here is where the pier for the telescope goes. And you can see how we dug out a little bit deeper underneath where the pier goes. So this is all going to be filled up with concrete in a few minutes. And you can see the string, the orange string goes across, and that's marking north. And then they put other strings here traveling across all of these different arms, and the whole thing meets here in the middle. So that's just a check as for how well all of this embed structure is lined up. Before you bury it in concrete, you want to make sure that everything is in the right place. So that was fun. And then they decided to build they didn't decide to. The county required us to build a retaining wall. So that was the next step. And here's a few pictures. And by now we're into winter. As you can see, there's snow here. And so here's a few pictures showing the form that they built for the retaining wall. And this big thing up here is the concrete truck with the pump that's dumping the concrete into the form to make the retaining wall. They actually did a really nice job with the retaining wall. It kind of gracefully arcs up and then back down. And there are a couple drains in here to help with drainage when it rains. And you can also see the completed base for the telescope. There's a bunch of you can see these little orange things sticking up out of the concrete. These are where the columns are going to go for the building. And I'll show you those in a minute too. But this ended up being a very nice platform for the telescope. They did a really good job with the concrete. And I don't think you can see very closely in here, but we did a lot of thinking before we actually decided to go ahead with the design that we used, because the original building that we were looking at is in Mexico. There's three of these same buildings that we're building here at the observatory. And what happened with the original design was when the dome turned, the telescope vibrated because they did not have an isolation joint in their concrete. And so we did a little bit of redesigning, and there is an isolation joint in here that separates the main part of the concrete from the part of the concrete that's going to be supporting the walls and the dome. So the main part here in the center is hopefully it's going to be isolated from the wall. So when the dome turns or the wind blows or something, the telescope should not vibrate.
Hey, Judy.
Yes.
If you didn't quite get true north true, is there some adjustability in the mount that could accommodate for that?
Within half a degree.
Gotcha.
They can adjust for it. So unless we were completely wrong, but I'm so OCD. We're spending all this money, and I'm so OCD about it that it still gives me nightmares. I'm 99.9% sure that we're good, but there's still this little voice every once in a while that says, "Oh, what if we messed up?" But we did it. We did it 3 times. So, but that's just me being a little paranoid. That's
very understandable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
So the next step, and this was a big step, was getting the building. We bought the building from DFM. They sell it as a package. It's called a low mass thermal observatory. And it's specially designed to help keep the thermal properties of the telescope constant all the time so that you get better seeing. And that's a big draw for this building. DFM subcontracted the building out to another company called Spring Fabs in Colorado. They were the ones that were building the components for the building. And they got hit pretty bad by COVID. Actually, DFM did too. And they didn't really we had a hard time getting the building components sent to us. So it finally arrived in January. And here you can see the pier. This big long tube is actually the pier for the telescope. And then up at the top, these are some of the beams for the sunscreen, actually. So the building started to arrive in January. It came in fits and starts. It took us about three shipments to get it all completely sent, because the first shipment came like maybe 2/3 of the building. They said they were sending all of it, but it wasn't all the parts weren't there. And so we had to get another shipment, and it was just a little bit frustrating, but it all came. And so now life is good. And here it goes. It's starting to go up. So the first picture here on the left is putting the pier in. That was the first point. And there's actually a ladder inside here. You can access through this little door. You can access a little ladder up in here in case you need to work on the cables and all that. Because some of the cables are going to be running through the pier. You can see a hole up here in the top where the cables are going to be coming out. And these two things down here at the bottom, these are my monstrous conduits. I'm so proud of these things because I've spent the last 20 years trying to feed cables through that little 2-inch pipe that we have for the 24-inch telescope. And so when we were putting in the conduits for this telescope, I said, I want big conduits. And so these guys are 6-inch conduits.
Wow.
It's a little crazy, but it's better to have bigger than to not have enough. So we have plenty of room for expansion over the next 50 years. Of course, everything's probably going to go wireless, and then we don't need any cables at all. But right now, it makes me happy to have my 6-inch conduits. So these run under the pier, and I'll show you a little bit later. They actually go under the ground and up by the computer room. And then they drilled some holes into the computer room wall. And now inside the building, there are these three conduits coming right up into the computer room. This middle picture is showing some of the columns going up. This is the support structure for the whole observatory. And there was one of the major milestones, I guess, is putting on the ring beam. And that's what this picture over here on the right is showing. The ring beam is where the dome is going to sit. So this thing has to be perfectly level and perfectly round, and it comes in pieces. So they have to assemble it into this ring and then set it on top of the columns. And that actually was kind of interesting because I'm standing out here. This is a 24-inch dome right here on the right. So I'm standing here on the roof, and they swung the ring beam right over me as they were moving it on the crane, because it was sitting on the ground by the building. They picked it up, swung it right over the roof, and I had to have my hat on. I guess officially I wasn't even supposed to be on the roof, but I went out there anyway because all the safety rules and stuff. But I was out there taking pictures anyway. So that was successful. They got all of that on there. And then the skins, or the walls, were the next thing to go on. And they are, I think they're 1/4-inch aluminum pieces. And they had to bring in the big crane again to lift all of the skins up onto the columns. And over here on the left, you can see the beginning of that process. They put the lower ones on first and worked their way up. And over here on the right is all of the skins on the building. They were not, well, Bancroft was not particularly thrilled. Bancroft's the company that we contracted to do the construction. There were 4,000 screws, self-tapping screws, that are holding on all of these skins. So it took the poor worker guys a while to get all of the screws in and get everything tight. They actually didn't finish the screws until like a couple months ago, right before they painted. They had to go through and make sure they weren't missing any of the screws. And then the next fun thing that happened was the dome. The dome is an ash dome, and it's a 24-foot dome, so it's the same size as the one for the 24-inch telescope. And it came in pieces, and we had to put it together. So over here on the left is a picture of the guys putting the leaves, I guess you call them, of the dome together. and starting to get that all going. And then here in the middle, you can see all of the dome put together except for the slit. And it was a fun crew. There's some guys from Ash. The two guys on the left here are from Ash Dome. They were the experts, and we were really glad that they came, because otherwise it would have been a lot harder to get the dome put together. So they led the team. The rest of the guys here are Bancroft guys, and they were having a good time, because this project for them is not a typical project. They normally go put up a building. They have never put up an observatory before, so the guys are pretty excited. So I made a little video, and if you go to the Mount Cuba website, there's a whole video about the lifting of the dome and putting it on the building. And up here at the top is the crane just finishing putting the dome on. It took a little bit of time to get it lined up properly and bolted down, but eventually it all worked out. And these little things on the side here, these are fun. These are their what do they call them? They're lifts, but they're right at the height, the maximum height that they're supposed to use these things at. They're about 20 feet above the ground. And so, at first I kind of thought I wanted to go ride on one just to see, but then I was watching them, and the wind blows and they wiggle a little bit, and you have to tie yourself in if you're in here. And so I decided I wasn't gonna push going for a ride on the lift. And then the next thing was the paint. Now we actually used a really fancy paint that they use on bridges. So hopefully the paint job is going to last us for quite a while. And you can also see the stairs going up. So the stairs are curved. They go around the building and up, and the door to the dome is actually in the back. The whole building is 20 feet tall. So the observing platform is up here, where the telescope will be is up at the top. And then these other columns here on the outside, these are the columns for the sunscreen. And I'll show you that in a minute. The sunscreen is supposed to help with the temperature variation. So the idea is that the sunscreen will take the heat from the sun, heat the air that's between the sunscreen and the building, and all that hot air will rise up and out, and it won't actually heat the building itself. That's the theory. And it does kind of work. I've actually already noticed it going into the building at the observatory. But we had some fun with the stairs. The first thing was when we got to put on the top stair that you can't see, the one that goes around the back, they were missing a step. So Bancroft had to manufacture a step to put in there. And then the other problem was the rail here. You can see how it's got a whole bunch of different things holding it on.
Clamps.
Clamps, thank you. Clamps, yes. The problem was that the rail was not curved properly to the curvature of the building. And it was off by like 1.5 inches. So what they had to do was put little slices in the rail at different points and bend it a little bit, and then solder the rail together. That took a while. And we also had the same problem with the columns for the sunscreen, the horizontal columns. You can see them here. And notice how here at the end, the columns don't meet up with the last beam. So the horizontal columns were also not bent to the right radius. So that was quite a hassle as well. We had to do the same thing. We had to put little slices in each column and then kind of piece it together. But it worked out fine. It's actually a little bit better now because we have some welding that went on in here. So the welds are stronger than the actual steel. So it's all going to work out fine in the end. And another issue that we had was with the turnbuckles here. Now you're inside the building. On the left-hand side is the pier right here. And you're looking at that wall, the inside of the walls. And these little diagonal things here are called turnbuckles, and they are what helps keep the building round. And so you're supposed to adjust the tension on these things. The problem was that a lot of them were too long. and they didn't fit very well into their slots. And so there was, again, a lot of welding that had to go on. We had to slice off some of the edges of some of the slots where the turnbuckles were supposed to go in, and and get them in that way. But it all worked out fine, and so now all the turnbuckles are in, and the building is round, and everything seems to be coming together finally.
Hey, Judy,
Yes.
2 quick questions. Number one, assuming that the fact that the dome's already been installed, the telescope will somehow fit through the door?
The telescope is going to come in through the slit. Yes, just like they did with the 24. The telescope is actually delayed. It was supposed to come this fall, but DFM informed me that they didn't tell me until I asked them, but they just recently informed me that the telescope is now not coming until the spring of 2022. So next spring.
Gotcha.
Again, because of COVID and supply delays related to that. So it is what it is. We can't, nothing you can do about it except be patient. But it actually kind of gives us an interesting time this summer and this fall to really understand this pier and how it's going to behave. So we're going to get some little sensors to put on the pier, bang on it and have people, run around on the observing platform and up and down the stairs and all kinds of things to see how the pier reacts, so that we'll have a handle on that before the telescope actually gets there. But yes, this is the slit will, this part of the slit, the lower part opens out and the upper part slides back. So it's not a winged dome like the 24-inch or the 4-inch. It's it's a lever. And so there's some hydraulics in here, and you can see the cables for the hydraulics that open the dome. So
Cool.
the telescope is going to come in through the slit. So we're going to have the crane come back in the spring. So they're going to put the pier in, and then the tube assembly. The mirror itself will not go in with the crane. There is a small crane built in here, a gantry crane, that you can take the mirror in through the double doors here and then lift it up. And there's a big hole in the floor that the mirror can come in through. So we're not going to have the big mirror dangling, 30 feet above the ground. That would be really scary. I wouldn't like that very much.
Cool.
I would be having a heart attack.
And a second question, thank you for that. Second question that this view would help. Chris and I were up at the observatory a couple weeks back, and we were curious, what's the landing that's about halfway up the steps?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, there's a landing right here.
Yep, that's the one.
I guess you can stop it. Well, actually you can't now because the sunscreen is on, but if you get tired, you can stop and have a rest.
Got it. Okay.
I don't know if there's a reason for that. I don't think there's anything in the code that says you have to have a landing there, but it was just
a thing.
The thing is there. And then up at the top, the landing is even bigger. It's about twice as long as this landing. And I really if I had thought beforehand, and I would have loved to have the stairs go all the way around, like a widow's walk, so that you could have walked around the outside of the dome, but I didn't think of that.
Gotcha.
Now it's too late.
Is there going to be like a couch or some vending machines at the landing or anything like that?
Yeah, we could have. That's a good idea. We could have a fundraiser. You could put a barrel there. You have to pay the toll to go up the stairs.
Right.
Have a Coke, or soda or something.
And I mean, it's my understanding, realistically, once things are up and running, you probably won't be even going into the dome that much, right?
Yes. This whole building is classified as a non-occupied equipment shed. That's what the county thinks it is. So that lets us get away with some things that we would normally have to worry about. Like, I had a hard time convincing the electricians that we did not want an exit sign over the door. They said, well, you have to have an exit sign. I said, no, I can't. I don't want an exit sign over the door in the dome. We can't do that. And once we told them it was a non-occupied equipment shed, then they were more agreeable to not have an illuminated exit sign.
Too funny.
They also wanted to put in 14 lights in the dome. No, we don't need 14 lights in the dome. It's supposed to be dark. It took a long time to convince, and I still have trouble. I don't think they quite understand that it's supposed to be dark and there's no people. The whole telescope is going to be remote access. And so the official control room is going to be over here in the computer room, but you'll be able to run the telescope from home. That's eventually the theory. It might take me a little while to figure that out, how to exactly we're going to get that done, because there's security issues. And I think what I'm going to do is set up a VPN for it, and that's how we'll do it. But I have to learn how to do that too. But this is a view from over on the side. So the building, the original building's over here, and you're standing where the brush used to be. That's another, I'm going to show you that in a minute too. That's another big thing. We cleared out a lot of the brush around the observatory so that now you can actually walk around the whole building, and you can walk up and around and over to the top of the hill up here. So here's where we stand right now. This picture I took just 2 days ago from the top of the hill, looking down. And so the sunscreen is on almost completely. You can still see a couple clamps here holding it on. They were there today because the sunscreen too has another 4,000 self-tapping screws holding it on all on. So they were there working on finishing up the screws today. And they've actually installed the 2 double doors down at the bottom that in this earlier picture, there were no doors. You can't see it on this one, but, and now the door is up at the top as well. There's a door up there. There's still a few things we need to, that they're working on. The big thing is the lights. Most of the wiring is done, but apparently the light fixtures themselves are on back order. And so we have to wait probably another 3 weeks before the light fixtures actually show up to get put in to the building itself. And there's going to be out here a little, a beam and a post over here that's going to be part of the gantry crane for getting the mirror in and out. Because the mirror itself is going to need to be re-illuminized or serviced or whatever, and we can't do it here. So the mirror is going to have to come out and get shipped off somewhere. And so there's a whole little crane inside here that lowers the mirror down, and then another crane that will bring it out and deposit it on the back of somebody's pickup truck to take it to UPS to ship it off to someplace with a big vacuum chamber to re-illuminize it. Hopefully we won't have to do that too often, maybe every 10 years or so.
Judy, does that sun shield go all the way around or just east to west?
Pretty much all the way around. The south, we're on the south side here now. So the south is the most important direction. Let me go back. Do I have another picture? I don't have another picture with the sunscreen. It goes, it's not around the door here. Oops, now I went too far. And it follows the stairs up. So it's not full height here. It kind of follows the stairs up and then it goes around. So it covers the stairs, which is kind of sad. Because you really, before the sunscreen was up, you could get a nice view as you were climbing up the stairs. But now they're covered up. I tried to get them to put a couple windows in there for me, but they wouldn't do it. So that's the building. So the next things I'm going to show you is things that we've been doing inside the original building. And this is kind of this little slide here is kind of a running joke because in my defense, I was left unsupervised and sometimes I just do stuff like reorganizing the library and things like that. So this was not unsupervised stuff, but I like this little slide and it makes me laugh. So I put that in there. So the next things I'm going to show you is what was going on inside the observatory itself. It all started with Greg's suggestion that he wanted to get rid of all of the old black and white pictures and put up something, maybe more educational, like something about posters of various things like stellar evolution and the planets and all of that. So I was kind of bored. So I started taking down all the pictures, all of the old black and white pictures, and I painted all of the frames around the old boards blue to match the new shades. So we have all new shades everywhere. And I painted the orange door blue. And Bud Howard actually put a little window in the door. So now there's a little window in the door. And we also had to turn all of this into bulletin boards because this behind those old black and white pictures is just drywall. So we bought, you can see a little piece of it here, a bunch of Homosoap boards, and I painted them gray, and we stuffed them up underneath the frames where the old picture used to be, and now you can put pins into these boards and rearrange all the posters however you want without having to put a lot of holes into the drywall like we were kind of thinking about doing in the beginning. So I painted all of the frames blue, and now we have a whole bunch of new posters. I'm still in the middle of rearranging everything. I'm trying to get it as a kind of a tour of the universe. So people would start here when they come in to the observatory, start with our solar system, kind of walk down this wall, and you can see all of the planets, and there's going to be a few more posters here. Saturn and Jupiter and the other planets are on the wall by Kim's office. And then the other wall, and I'll show you in a minute, is going to be stars and stellar evolution. And then there's a third bulletin board that's going to be galaxies in the universe. So people can kind of start, in our local neighborhood with the solar system, walk around the rotunda and end up at the end of the universe. That's my plan anyway. Yeah, here's a few other looking at. So here we have Saturn and some of the others. So there's all kinds of educational things, cutaways of what the interior of the planets look like. Over here is going to be my stellar evolution, stars and things like that. And then, in the library, we've actually painted the upper part of the library that was that tan color is now a very light gray. It's called silver polish, and it makes the whole library look a lot brighter. I don't have a really good picture of the library. I meant to do it today, but I didn't get it done. But it makes it all nice and bright in there. And we went completely crazy, and here's Kim's office now. So I don't know how many of you remember Kim's office. It was all paneling. It was very dark. So we got the paneling painted. She picked out this blue color. You can still see the paneling lines in there. So we got all of this painted. It turns out it was a good thing because when we moved all the desks out, there was a lot of mold and stuff growing behind the desks. So it's now a much nicer environment for Kim to work in. And then the storeroom, this was the advantage of the construction. We had a dumpster. And so we had a lot of material in here that was kind of old and moldy and was getting eaten by mice and things like that. So all of that stuff that was in here is now gone. And so you can actually walk around in the pier room right now, and the storeroom too. There was a lot of stuff that I got rid of in the storeroom. And then this, I think, was one of the greatest things that we did. The project manager from Bancroft, his name is Gary, and I convinced him that he really needed to bring a really big ladder into the observatory. He had one. The construction guys had one, and we had these shades that we had bought a long time ago, but we couldn't get them up because this was too tall. This is down by the planetarium. And these old shades that had been up there for years, and they were really kind of nasty. And so Gary graciously got on his big ladder and got up here and pulled the old nasty shades down and put up these new ones. And he even washed the windows. It was quite amazing. He showed me the water that when he was done washing the windows, and it was black. It was really gross. So that was really, really nice of Gary to do that. And he also switched out the other blind here. This is on the stairwell going up to the roof. And there was an old nasty wooden blind there that was falling apart too. So now we have a new blind in there. And then this room, this is the computer room. We put some new paint, new floor. This is going to be the control room for the telescope when I'm done. I'm going to get some monitors, big monitors to hang on the walls, because we're going to have a computer that's going to run the telescope, a computer that's going to run the camera, that's going to be on the telescope and the instruments. We're also going to have a spectrograph on the telescope. So there's going to be this telescope is an f4. And so the field of view is going to be about 4 times what I get right now on the 24-inch. So it's going to be about a degree on a side. So about a square degree. It's going to be quite large. And the camera that you put on there, it can't be the same camera that I use on the 24-inch. It has to be a much bigger detector. And so the detector is going to be 60 millimeters by 60 millimeters on the side. It's going to be quite large, but it's going to be really amazing. So that's going to be the imaging camera. And then we're also going to have an Eschell spectrograph on the telescope, because we have some people at the university that are interested in very hot, very bright B stars, magnetic B stars. And they like to take spectra of these stars and watch the spectral lines go back and forth. And I'm not a spectroscopy expert, so this is something that I'm learning as I go. So that's what the Eschell spectrograph is going to be for. And it's going to be a fiber-fed spectrograph. So that's one reason we needed these big conduits. Maybe not quite this big, but I like them. And so the spectrograph itself is probably going to be sitting on the table here, because you don't put an Eschell spectrograph on the telescope, because the Eschell spectrograph is very high resolution, very sensitive. So as the telescope moves around, the spectrograph would get bumped, and its aspect changes, and that changes the calibrations of it. So the Eschell spectrograph is going to be sitting here right on the table, and the fiber is going to go out through the conduits up to the telescope itself. The camera is going to be directly on the telescope. It's also good. That camera is also going to be fiber optic. So the fibers from the camera is going to come down from the telescope under the concrete, under the road, and out here into the computer room. So we're going to have a computer that's going to be running the instruments, the spectrograph and the camera, and then another computer that's going to be running the telescope itself. And then I think we're also going to end up having to have a third computer that's going to be running the weather station. We're going to get some kind of a weather station that you can use on the web, so that we can see it remotely. We're also going to get an all-sky camera, because that's important. If you're running the telescope remotely, you have to keep track of the sky conditions at the observatory. And there's something else that just went in my head, and now it's gone. There was something else. There's also going to be 3 infrared cameras in the dome itself with the telescope, so that you can monitor the position of the telescope, make sure there's nothing in the way. Like, say, I was there that day and I decided I needed to do something, and I moved a ladder near the telescope. So it would be nice to know before you move the telescope that there's nothing in the way that you're going to run into. So there's going to be some cameras in the dome itself. And we're also getting some security cameras, because we did have an incident. Well, we were going to do this anyway, but there was an incident about a week ago now where someone came up to the observatory at midnight and was walking around out there and trying to go up the stairs. Don't know who it was. They weren't there very long, but we do need to have something where we can watch the building itself, make sure there's nobody around that shouldn't be there. So this is the computer room. It's going to be the control room for the telescope. I'm still going to use it for my class. So these are some of my class computers over there in the corner. So I'm going to set that up again for my class and anybody else that wants to use the computer room too. And then finally, this is your quiz. So what room do you think this is at the observatory? Does anybody
room.
guess?
The dark room.
This is the dark room. Do you remember that room at the top of the stairs when you go out on the roof that you opened the door and it was dark and smelled like old chemicals and was kind of nasty? It is now this room. This is actually the dark office now. And we put a window in here and we painted it and put in a new floor and got rid of all the old cabinets. We still have I kept the air conditioner for nostalgia. It actually is a nice air conditioner. It works fine. But so this is this is where I sit when I'm working on stuff. This is Bud's chair over here. And then Ben, who has his satellite dish down at the bottom of the hill, he has a little desk here too. So this is now usable office space, and it's really, really, really nice. And Bud even got us, oops, let me go back. It takes it a minute to go back. There we go. Bud even got us a nice sign for the door. So now there's the dark room that used to be used for developing the plates is now the Delaware Astronomical Research Center room. And we also got a little window in the door as well. So that's all I have about what's going on at the observatory. Next thing I want to talk about is SARA, because some people were asking about that. For people who don't know, SARA stands for, let's see if I can remember this now, Southeastern Astronomical Research Association, I think is what it stands for. There are, I think we're up to 16 members now. So it's smaller universities that can't afford, to buy into a big telescope like Keck or something like that. So they all got together and formed a consortium, and we have 3 telescopes right now that are run remotely. They're all 1 meter class telescopes, and there's one in the Canary Islands, there's one in Chile, and there's one in Arizona. And there's a nice website if you want to go check it out, saraobservatory.org. It tells you what's going on. It has some pretty pictures of stuff. The pandemic hit SARA hard. All of the observatory, it actually hit a lot of, let me say it hit all observatories really hard. Pretty much everyone I know of was closed. And for SARA, there was no one allowed on the mountain in the Canary Islands at all. You had to close down the telescopes and everybody went home. Chile was even worse. And I'm not sure. I think they are open again now. They're open for remote access, but I don't think they're letting a full complement of workers up there yet on the top of on the mountain. And that was just for the observing part with all the observatories closed. They opened up again with limited access at the beginning of this year. And so now you can use the Canary Islands telescope, you can use the Chile telescope, and you can use Kitt Peak, which is the third telescope. But we're still really hampered as far as our observing, because the university and you guys and a lot of people, Mount Cuba, no group meetings. So it's hard for me to train students to do the observing if I can't have a group meeting, because I can't give them, it's all remote access, and I can't really give them the access information to the telescope. So we all have to be together to kind of do it. It's not the same over Zoom. It doesn't work very well. It works much better when they can actually sit down and try to do the observing themselves. But they are opened up again, and hopefully by the fall things will be a little bit more relaxed. We do get we get 60 nights a year on all 3, not 60 nights on all 3 telescopes. We get 60 nights total distributed over the 3 telescopes. So we get roughly about 20 nights a year on each one of the telescopes. The Canary Islands is my favorite one. It's a really nice site, and they have a very nice camera on the telescope, and you can actually start observing in the afternoon and not have to stay up all night, which I like. But the problem is that it's been over a year, And there are some servicing issues with the telescope that we cannot fix because one, people are not allowed on the complete number of workers are not allowed on the mountain. And two, the company that we contract with to maintain the telescopes for us, they're based in Arizona, and Americans are not allowed to fly to Canary Islands. Belongs to Spain, so Americans are not allowed to fly to Spain right now. So we can't send anybody out there to deal with the technical issues. So some of the issues with the Canary Islands telescope is that the mirror petals are stuck open. I guess that's better than being stuck closed. But you have to store the telescope at the right angle so that you don't hopefully keep the mirror as clean as you can, even though the mirror covers are open. And then sometimes people forget that the mirror covers are broken, and so they try to close them anyway, and then all the software hangs up, and then that you have to go through a big process to reset everything. There's also a couple issues with the filter wheels that need to be attended to, but we can't right now. The same thing with chilling. Now there is good news with chili, because I think before the pandemic started, we had a couple of nights that were for the DAS with you guys, and we used the chili telescope. And they had the worst CCD on that telescope that I've ever seen. This was horrible. They have now replaced that thing with an Andor camera that's much nicer. So once things are settled down again and we can start to do this again, the Chile telescope has a very nice camera on it now. And we can go off and get some really cool pictures of some of the southern targets. And I did get a couple nights in the fall with the Sarah. And so these are some of the Sarah at the Canary Islands. And so these are some of the pictures that I took for my students for the winter session, and I think for fall, for them to play with here, even though they didn't remotely observe. So it's kind of a nice, we can do nice things with the telescope. I like this one. I like the Galaxy, the NGC 6946 is my favorite picture. But I also like the Trifid, but I needed to work on this some more and get the colors to come out a little bit better. But that one turned out pretty nice. And I think that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Judi, thank you very much. I'll maybe start off with two.
Okay.
Number one, the new telescope.
Yes.
As opposed, compared to the old one, what's that gonna open up for you? What's that gonna allow you to do from a research standpoint?
Oh, have you heard of Gaia? The satellite called Gaia. Oh, actually, there's two satellites right now, Gaia and TESS. And Gaia is out there officially measuring all of the distances to the nearest few billion stars in the Milky Way. Just a little bit, a small part of the Milky Way. But it's doing that with parallaxes and a fancy algorithm where instead of just looking at one star bouncing back and forth with you take your finger and you hold it out and you look at it with one eye, and the other eye, your finger jumps back and forth. The stars do the same thing, but Gaia, instead of just looking at one star at a time, is looking at all the stars and fitting everything at the same time. It's really impressive what they can do. But anyway, a byproduct of Gaia is that they are finding lots and lots of new variable stars. Same thing with TESS. TESS's official mission is to find extrasolar planets. But as we discovered with the earlier Kepler mission, there are very few stars in our galaxy that are actually completely stable, completely same brightness all the time. Most stars have some level of variability. And so TESS is now finding a whole bunch of new variables. And both of these data sets, Gaia and TESS, Gaia more likely, goes down to very faint magnitudes, like 17th, 18th magnitude. And with the 24-inch telescope, I can see an 18th magnitude star, but the signal's not good enough to do anything with it, to actually learn anything about the star. And so now with the 1.3 meter, we should be able to easily get down to 18th and maybe 19th magnitude. We probably won't get much fainter than that because of the sky background, but we'll see how it goes. And we'll see. I'm also hoping that the seeing with the new telescope is a lot better. The 24-inch, because it sits in the middle of the heated building, the seeing is never good on the 24-inch. The best I've ever seen the seeing for the 24-inch is about maybe 3 arc seconds, maybe 2.5 on a really good night. But I'm hoping with the 1.3 meter, with the better environment, that we can get down to maybe 2 arc seconds. That would be really nice to be able to do. But for me, with the white dwarfs, because I study the pulsating white dwarf stars, which are, dead stars. The sun's going to become a pulsating white dwarf in a few billion years. But I like to learn, because you can learn from the pulsations about what the interior of the star is like. And so the white dwarfs are small and they're faint. And so for me, with the bigger telescope, I'll be able to get down to fainter targets to be able to look at their pulsations. As far as other things, because the field of view of this telescope is going to be so large, there's a lot of other things that we can do. There's been some interest in transients. Right now, the camera that I bought is a normal CCD camera, so it's not a CMOS, but we might in the future get a CMOS camera that can read out X number of frames per second, so that we can do very rapid transients. Things like asteroids, occultating stars, things like that. Supernova surveys, there's pretty much a lot. The possibilities for this telescope are really large. There's a lot of range of subjects that we'll be able to investigate with this new telescope. And the big thing about this telescope is it has a slew motor. And you might laugh, but the 24-inch telescope does not have a slew motor. And so you pull it around, with ropes to get it to point. And so the new telescope, you'll be able to slew from one object to another. That's going to be really nice.
Cool. So then the follow-up is, so with that, what's the future of the 24-inch telescope?
I'm still going to use it for my class, and I'll still use it for some of the, sometimes it's advantageous to look at a target in different wavelengths with different filters. So say it's a brighter target. For one of my white dwarfs, a bright target would be 14th magnitude. So you could look at it with the 24-inch with the V filter, and then the 1.3 meter with the blue filter, so that you could look at the different amplitudes of the pulsations in different wavelengths. And that gives you information sometimes about the distribution of the pulsations on the surface of the star. And other types of variable stars like Cepheids, I think, and some interacting binaries where you have an accretion disk. The difference in the pulse, the variability with wavelength is larger. And so looking at things with different filters is interesting to do. So there's always things that the 24-inch is not going away. And anybody that wants to learn how to use it, we could use it for public nights and things like that. Just let me know, and I can teach you how to use it. It's not that hard once you've done it a couple times. But it does not have a slew motor, and the dome's not automated. And the hardware is a little bit kludged together, but it works. So I'd be interested if anybody wants to learn how to use it.
Cool. I'd say at this point, I can step out of the way, and if people would like to unmute themselves and ask questions directly, we'll get this a little bit more interactive.
Okay.
Question. Oh, go ahead.
Judy, you said it was an F4 scope. Is that with a reducer, or does that not count any kind of reducer?
It's not a
or corrector?
reducer, no reducer.
Okay, is there a corrector? 'Cause
Yes.
okay,
There's a corrector plate, yes.
all right, and so it's a Ritchie Credian with a corrector that makes it an F4.
Yes.
Okay, so that works out to about a 5 meter focal length, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what can you tell us about what camera and filters, et cetera, you have?
The camera that I have is an Andor. Here, we can go off and find it. Let's see. Let's just do my. This isn't actually working very well anymore. Let me try this here. Can I get out of the? Let's exit. Click exit presentation. I want to exit my presentation. There we go. Let's try this one. Can you guys see my whole screen now?
Yep.
Yep.
So it's an Andor camera. It's I don't remember the name of it. I ordered it already, but oh come on! I don't want to. I need to. So a large CC. It's an icon. There we go. And it's this guy here on the end. So it has a. It's this one right here.
Excellent. Okay.
It can be cooled down to like, well, they advertise 100 degrees below whatever the ambient temperature is, but this is with water cooling assistance. And in the beginning, we're just going to start off being air cooled because I'm learning this remote access stuff. I don't want to be worried about whether the water pump is working or not. So with just the air cooling, you get down to about -80 below whatever the ambient temperature is. And it has a really nice detector in it, fairly low read noise. And one reason I like it a lot is the well depth is pretty good.
Oh yeah.
So with this detector, we're going to get a field that's about almost a degree, not quite a degree. And it's fiber optic. And here's some of the other stuff in here. And I don't know what I'm going to do for software. It runs under Windows and Linux. I generally hate Windows. So I use Linux right now for my other Andor camera. So the people who run the software that I'm using right now are some of my colleagues from Poland. And I'm going to see if I can get them to put this camera in as one of their ones that they support with their software. We'll see.
Okay, and the fiber optics for communication, right? There's no light going on along that fiber optic from the camera.
Oh yeah, no, it's just sending zeros and ones.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I have a question on the mirror, on the stabilization of it, as far as if it's a very hot day to cold day. Is it just air cooling on the mirror, and then will the mirror perform, or if it's not right at ambient temperature, or what have you researched with that, or do you know about that?
The mirror is made of zero door, which is a really low thermal expansion ceramic. So as long as we're not trying to melt it or freeze it too badly, it's not going to change. It should be fine.
Okay.
You said it's all ones and zeros on the fiber optic, even for the spectrometer, or is that a
No,
light?
the spectrometer is going to actually have light, because in that case, the fiber is what's detecting the star.
Yeah, so that's a light. That one's basically a light guide then
Yes.
to the spectrometer.
Yes. Yeah, because the spectrometer is actually going to be sitting in the control room.
Who made the mirror?
Oh, I think it was shot. That was actually a fun question because the mirror came from Germany and they were getting ready to ship it right when the pandemic started. And so it sat on the dock in Germany for like 4 months before, because it was considered non-essential. And so it took forever for it to actually get shipped, which is one of the reasons why the telescope is delayed, is because they didn't get the mirror.
Okay.
When they were supposed to get the mirror. DFM does its own mirror grinding, so they have all the machines right there. But
Just to clarify, SHOT made the blank.
Right.
Yes.
DMF's taking that blank and making it into an optical mirror.
Yes, DFM is making the mirror from the blank that we got from Germany.
So we're going to depack that?
Go ahead.
Are we going to depack that mirror in the shop there?
No.
I think we are.
No.
I think we are.
No. No, I will find you. I'm going to be very protective of my mirror.
Okay.
I have more pictures from Mexico, but it's actually a cool mirror because it has a very big hole because it's such a short focal length. So you can actually stand up inside the telescope through the mirror, through the secondary mirror hole. And the mirror mount itself is quite, it's amazing. There's little sensors all around it. Well, they're analog sensors that tell you how level the mirror is. And so the mirror mount is pretty sensitive.
I think we should get a picture of you inside the telescope then.
When it comes here, yes, definitely.
Definitely. And it should be like mounted to the wall.
Yes. I didn't show you all the pictures. I don't know if I have any on my drive here. Let's see. No.
So can we put something else up in the dome until the telescope shows up in the first quarter of 22?
I've actually kind of thought of bringing one of the small telescopes up there.
Okay.
But I might do that. We'll see. You can't put anything on the pier itself. It would have to be sitting, on the floor.
Okay.
So, there is a big hole in the floor right now because there's supposed to be a portable lift up there that is coming with the telescope. So we don't have the lift yet. So there's like maybe a 4 or 5 foot hole. Right now it's covered up with the part of the lift crane, the gantry crane. But we'll have to be careful when we're up there that people don't fall down the hole.
The DAS has that, what is it, that red 4-inch ball scope that we could lend to put up there?
Oh yeah, we could bring that up there. I mean, I would like to just see how the environment is before the telescope gets there. That would be kind of interesting.
Okay.
I think the building is working. Even now when you walk, like today, I walked in the door and it was noticeably cooler inside the building than it was outside.
That's cool.
I think everything's gonna work really well.
And this is all going to be controlled from Newark?
Pretty much, you can, if you have the login information, the VPN information, you can run it from anywhere. That's what we do with the Sarah telescope. Sometimes if I'm here observing, I can observe at my house, or I can observe at the university. With the students, it depends. You'll be able to run it just about anywhere where you have internet.
Okay.
We're going to have to be careful with our internet security.
Hmm.
I think, like right now we have wireless at the observatory that has no password. So I think that's going to have to stop once the telescope is there, because there are people out there that are not friendly, and we want to keep them away from the telescope. That's why I'm thinking the VPN might be the best way to go, but I got to do some more research on that.
Judy, will this telescope become part of Sarah?
No,
Okay.
no. I think we're going to have enough interest with me, and there are 3 or 4 professors at the university. And I think once the telescope comes online and we get it advertised to students, there's going to be more astronomy students coming to Delaware that are interested in actually observing. And so I think with the nights that we have, because I mean, Mount Cuba is not the place you would normally think to put a telescope. But we do have a good chunk of decent nights. But I think with the nights that we do have, they're going to be filled up pretty much by local people.
Yeah, we get what, 4 or 5 good nights a year.
Yeah. Actually, you can do surprisingly well even on bad. For what I do with photometry, especially if I have a big field like that with a lot of comparison stars, you can do really well even if it's cloudy, because you're measuring the clouds with all the other stars, and you can actually remove the clouds. So it can be 20, even 30% cloudy, and you can still get good photometry.
Nice.
So it doesn't, gone are the days when it actually has to be photometric to do photometry, which is a good thing for Mount Cuba.
Yeah.
And spectroscopy, of course, too, you don't have to be photometric either for that.
Nice.
So I think we're going to probably get maybe 40 or 50, maybe even 60 nights a year that are really good. And then another 30 or so that, maybe are good for taking pretty pictures of something, or, other things. I think we'll have a good number of nights. We're not going to compete with Kitt Peak, where they have 300 photometric nights a year. But we have some good nights.
Cool.
Thank you so much for coming, Judy. You did a fantastic job.
You're welcome. Oh my God, it's 9:30. I didn't realize how late it was.
It's going to be a whole new world when we come back out of the pandemic. It's going to be totally different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And they did a lot of grading around the whole outside of the observatory, and we've got all new grass planted, and it's going to look really nice when everything comes up.
Yeah.
It's going to be like we're coming out of our chrysalis and we're butterflies or something. It's going to be totally different.
Yes.
Whole
Yeah.
world.
Yes.
Are emerging from the ground after 17 years.
Oh.
Yeah. You're right. Let's just not mate and die, though, okay?
No.
No, I
Have
don't-
a few more years of life.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much, Judy. That was just tremendous. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome. It's exciting what's going on.
It really is.
Really is.
Gosh.
Yep. Cool. Again, Judy, you've heard it, but again, really appreciate it. Great to hear all the cool stuff going on. And just a final reminder to everybody, keep an eye on your email. I will be contacting via some means with some follow-on information and a poll or survey or something about the picnic coming up here in a couple weeks.
Cool. Oh, and you can check on the Mount Cuba website. I have a time-lapse video of the whole construction of the telescope.
Oh, cool.
Oh, nice.
You can check that out. And there's pictures from the construction on there too.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have to look at that.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Well, again, thanks to everybody, and hopefully we'll see a lot of you at the picnic, and maybe in the not so distant future up at Mount Cuba again, which is going to feel really good after all that we've been through. So
yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
It'll be
Nice
good
to
have
see
you guys
everybody.
back.
All right, nice seeing
What's
you.
that? What's that, Judy?
It'll be good to have everybody back.
Yeah.
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 Oh, and
Right.
sorry, just a few more little plugs. If you hang on a second, Mount Cuba is holding a public night event. This Friday, right?
I think it's this Friday, yes.
Yeah.
Ask the Space Geek any question about space.
Yeah. I know Judy and I and maybe a couple of others that are on this call are going to be the standby space geeks to answer questions from the public. And then I believe the other little pitch is this Saturday, I think Kim is trying to get together a little outside cleanup, tidy up, and is looking for help/volunteers.
Yes.
So if anyone feels like getting outside and getting some sun and seeing some people, maybe contact Kim for details about how you might help do a little yard cleanup up at Mount Cuba.
Yeah,
Man, I'd do that in a heartbeat, but I'm working.
Yeah.
Damn. I'd really like to help.
Other than that, we do have one more meeting in this season, third week of June. And then obviously in between there, I certainly encourage people to jump into the Tuesday night workshops, which we're holding every Tuesday. So we'll see everybody later. Again, thanks for joining in.
All right.
Everybody.
See you guys. Nice to see everyone.
Nice to see
Night.
everyone.
Have a great
Night,
night.
everyone.
Night.
Yeah.